Welcome to another edition of Anglican Unscripted. This is episode 938. I'm Kevin Kallsen.
I'm George Conger. Today is October 18th, 2025.
All right, welcome to another episode, Our Happy Place, where George and I sit down after a long week of news and we're going to download everything we know to you, the listener. We appreciate you being here. Before we get too far into the episode, please like, subscribe, comment, and share. If you've not shared this episode or this show recently, you need to do so because there's a lot here that people need to know. Because in 1 week, the whole communion, it blew up. Poof! And we're here to talk about it. George, how you doing this week?
Pretty good. We didn't film yesterday because I was having a heart catheterization, and I had a stent put in, went through my arm, and now I've got all four cylinders pumping away.
Good.
All clear.
As related news, George, I told people about my ambulance ride at the end of August. After my bike ride, my heart went into SVT, supraventricular tachycardia, beating at 200 beats a minute. And I went to the hospital, and they recommended I see a cardiologist. The cardiologist ran 3 tests. The first test was a nuclear stress test. The second test was I had to wear a Holter monitor. And the third test was echocardiogram, where they take ultrasound images of the heart. The Holter monitor test, where they measure the rhythm and rate, perfect. Kevin, you got a healthy heart. The echocardiogram, which shows the valves and the walls, Kevin, your heart is a specimen of a 60-year-old. You're doing great. You're a wonderful cyclist. The nuclear stress test, I failed. Apparently, I have some partially blocked arteries, one or more, and we have to figure out where and try to get that taken care of ASAP. So I'm trying to get a CAT scan or book some time in a cath lab as well in the next couple of weeks. So pray for that to happen. Up here in Maryland, things like this happen slowly. The soonest appointment I could get was November 19th. I'm like, what? Come on. November 19th. I want to go for a bike ride tomorrow. That's not going to happen. So off the bike for a little while, and we'll have to get this all worked up. So keep George and I in your prayers. We are the same age, going through the same things. It's one of those oddities. George, let's move on here to the news. A lot has happened since we last spoke, which was only Tuesday. Derek Jones has taken the ACNA to court. That proceedings happened yesterday. He was suing for a TRO, a temporary restraining order, saying, I don't want the ACNA talking to the chaplains. I will be irreparably harmed. I don't want them taking the trademark. I'll be irreparably harmed. Listing all these things. He went before the judge. What did the judge say?
Judge took it under advisement, but gave them an order to come to a resolution, mediation. Essentially, this is a defeat for Jones. Jones had filed an emergency petition for a restraining order, as you said, to stop the ACNA from taking his chaplains, supplanting him as head of the jurisdiction. He gave evidence that his income had fallen in half, that the majority of chaplains had left, the majority of congregations were moving out. And if the court didn't stop things, he would be left high and dry by the time this wound its way through the court system. That's what you ask for a temporary restraining order for, or an injunction, to preserve the status quo while the things are going forward. Well, the court heard the response of the ACNA, and you can read both pleadings on the Anglican Inc. website. And the ACNA essentially argued that this is a internal church affairs issue that the courts have no jurisdiction in. And the court did not dismiss Jones's case, but effectively they've dismissed it by saying, we'll take it under advisement, but meaning we're going to stick in our back pocket. In 6 months, we may make a decision, but while we're waiting, I want you guys to figure out how you're going to take care of this yourself.
Sure. Now, rumors are that there's going to be a presentment. I've not seen one. I understand that Archbishop Wood has been out of the country And so I don't know. We'll talk about that in our next story. I don't know, if that's going to happen or not. But I've been told by sources it's definitely going to happen.
Yeah, people have told us that it's in the paperwork, and it just may be on Archbishop Wood's desk as awaiting his return from overseas. So that's where we are.
Yeah. And I asked for the latest numbers. It seems like 150 to 175 of the 225 chaplains have decided to remain with the ACNA and not stay with Jones. I don't know whether they're staying with the jurisdiction or not. This is all, fog of war happening as we report it, train wreck in progress, however you want to say what's happening. So we're not going to be reporting the most accurate numbers because nobody really knows as this is continuing, George.
Yeah, it's a shame. A great deal of money is being spent on expensive lawyers to
I know.
It's a shame.
Well, no, we have followed up. You've asked the lawyers some questions when they contacted us. Have they responded to our questions at all?
No, they had their initial heavy-handed barrage.
Meet the lawyer email. I got that.
And I took them up on their, they said, if you have any questions, ask us. And I've asked, and they've not come back. And they've basically...
Okay. It is what it is.
I don't want. I mean, at this point, I would just be making assumptions, but I don't think Jones has a very good case. And from what I've read,
in our opinion, not stating fact anyway, it does not look like a strong case.
And it would be wise. And it's also wise for an attorney to tell his client, "Don't throw away money if you don't have to." I mean. The lawyer could pad his bill by talking to me every 20 minutes, answering my questions and engaging in discussions with me, but that doesn't advance Jones's interests.
No.
It just costs him money, and at this stage, that's the only thing he's got left is the money that he's spending.
Yeah.
When will that run out?
Yeah, in our opinion. So, hey, I'm just trying to keep from getting another email from a lawyer. Let's move on and talk about the Church of England, LLF, what is that? We've discussed this before, Living, Love, and Faith. Is that what it stands for?
Living in Love and Faith, yeah.
Okay, has died in the waters of the ocean that surrounds the UK. It's done. No more LLF.
Technically, it's still alive, but... it's dead. Living in Love and Faith has been almost a 10-year process, it seems, to find a way to introduce gay blessings into the Church of England and allow clergy to enter into same-sex marriage. And Justin Welby had really pushed heavily in favor of this. And up until this past summer, the situation was where the House of Bishops had commended same-sex prayers, meaning go ahead, use them. And the questions were, could the prayers of love and faith now be used on their own as a standalone service? Could you have a gay wedding service? And could clergy now enter into same-sex marriages, not just civil partnerships? And then the third question was, what do we do about conservatives who think this is wrong? Will we give them delegated episcopal oversight, pastoral oversight, depot? The House of Bishops met last week, and on Wednesday of this week, they released a statement saying that based upon the legal and theological advice they have been given, to have same-sex marriage, standalone services, and to have clergy enter into same-sex marriages would require a 2/3 of each house of synod, bishops, clergy, and laity. And that's not going to happen because they're roughly in 50-50 area, maybe a +1 here, -1 there. The advice that they had going back, I think,
2017, yeah.
From the lawyers, which Welby and company have hid, was that if it walks like a duck, and if it quacks like a duck, and it looks like a duck, and it smells like a duck, it's a duck. You cannot just say, well, this isn't gay marriage, but it is, but we're allowing you to pretend it is. To do that would be changing the doctrine of marriage in the Church of England. And to do that, you have to follow these rules, which requires a 2/3 vote. There's no way that's going to happen in this generation. So the bishops have succumbed to reality and saying essentially it's dead. David Walker, who's a liberal, Bishop of Manchester, had a letter to his clergy saying, I personally support this and I will support those who feel hurt by this, but this is where we stand. It's done. It's over. Ian Paul, a member of the Archbishop's Council, friend of this show, wrote basically an article saying it's, for all intents and purposes, it's done. They've finally woken up to reality that they've been trying to square the circle for so long. Now,
hold on.
My assumption is
it's never done. Okay, because somebody out there is going to say, well, we're going to do it in my church. Coming over and we'll offer these prayers and we'll have same-sex weddings in my church. It's going to happen in a Church of England parish, if not now, soon. The question is, will there be any effort to not stop it, but to hold the people who do that accountable?
Well, Charlie Bell, who is a gay activist, clergyman, has already been on Twitter, X, saying that he'll go, if gay couples want to get married, he'll do it. He's entered into a gay marriage himself. So as you said, there will be clergy who will deliberately set out to provoke. And will his bishop, I can't remember if he's in London or Southwark, but I don't see Mullally or Christopher Chesham doing anything about it. So you may have a situation like we had in the United States for 20 odd years, where, like we had in Massachusetts, you couldn't do gay marriage in the church, but they would happen, and the bishop would close his eyes and even participate in them, and just, rules for thee, but not for me. So where's this going to leave? Now, this is going to be intolerable for the gay activists because they want to have formal permission to do this. They want to be right. They want to win. And they've been handed frankly, a traumatic loss. And
well, I think
I really have to say the system has failed because there are no new facts on the ground. It's just that there are now new people pushing things, and what's being pushed forward is reality, not Justin Welby's fantasy of I can accomplish, I can make all these things happen.
Well, I think that just shows how much power Welby had at the time. That it went so far as it really could go without being passed, because Welby had that ability to keep it on the forefront at the top of everybody's list. And when Welby was gone, LLF died as well.
Sarah Mullally, the Archbishop-elect of Canterbury, put out a letter last night, that addressed both this issue and our next story, the GAFCON story. And I'll read you a paragraph from her letter. Naturally, the announcement of my appointment has brought renewed attention to the Church of England's decision to allow churches at their own discretion to offer prayers of blessing for people in same-sex relationships. I welcomed, past tense, the introduction of prayers of love and faith, while also affirming the Church of England's decision to maintain its doctrine of holy matrimony as a lifelong union between one man and one woman. So Mullally is saying, I was wearing the Welby hat, where go ahead and do it, but we're going to pretend it's not what it looks like or is. These decisions, and now she's pushing off responsibility, were taken by General Synod in February 2023 and remained the position of the Church of England. Last week, the House of Bishops agreed in principle that any further decisions relating to these questions would require additional synodical and legislative processes. And then she goes on to say, I recognize that these are matters of deep theological conviction for many across our communion, and I remain committed to listening with humility and traveling together to the highest degree possible as we continue to discern the truth of God and to make room for one another. So, what is Sarah Mullally saying? Well, this will be read as a letter of weakness by her GAFCON opponents, certainly.
Sure.
Some in the Church of England would say, well, this is even tempered and measured. She's just stating reality. Well, they had an archbishop in Welby who was able to change reality and say
Redefine
gay
reality,
blessings are
yeah.
not marriage, redefine. And now Mullally is saying, well, that used to be true, but it's not true today, but it's sort of half true. And she's not off to a good start.
And she's not saying,
politics.
and she's not just saying, wait till I'm in office, we'll get this back started. She's just stating that, this is the reality. It's not going to go any further. And what we had hoped for is not going to be redefined. So
she's probably overjoyed because now she doesn't have to deal with this.
Yeah.
In her 6 years, she's going to only have 6 years as Archbishop of Canterbury till she meets his mandatory retirement age. And this composition of synod is not going to change so dramatically that you're going to have supermajorities amongst all three houses of synod. So in essence, she's off the hook. She can now talk about other stuff because LLF is done. So this is probably, even if she is a supporter of this, she's probably relieved that she doesn't now have to deal with this issue.
let's take you back, George. 2008. You and I were in Jerusalem, and we were there for a conference called the Global Anglican Future Conference. We went out to this wonderful restaurant outside the city gates where they took us in a taxi, and this taxi guy had to speak in some weird dialect to get us through all these security checkpoints, and we had an amazing dinner. I don't remember how much it cost, but apparently the really good food was outside city center. We came back, and they had a document for everyone who attended to sign called the Jerusalem Declaration. And I signed it. I was one of the first signers because when they put it on the table, that's where my camera was. Well, okay, I'll sign. So one of those realities. Who's Kevin Kallsen? I don't know, but he's one of the first signers. It was weird. So
you had your John Hancock on the
yeah. And so lo and behold, many years later, you and I are still reporting on GAFCON, the Anglican Communion, and all of a sudden, somebody pushed the nuclear button. We got a letter from the president of GAFCON saying enough is enough. What's going on, George?
Yeah, on October 16th, which is the feast of Ridley and Latimer, the Oxford martyrs, GAFCON declared a unilateral declaration of independence from Canterbury, UDI. They released a statement that's rather detailed, but let me give you a little bit of background before we get into the details of the statement. The chairman of GAFCON is the Archbishop of Rwanda, Laurent Mabanda. About a month ago, he called a meeting of the GAFCON leaders to be held in Sydney, Australia. And the decision was GAFCON's Jerusalem Declaration in 2008 was a declaration to reform and renew the Anglican Communion. Specifically, was not a break with the Anglican Communion's its structures or anything like that. The authors, the leaders were quite clear this is not a breaking apart. Almost 20 years have passed. Very little has changed in the reform and renewal since Jerusalem Declaration. And Mabanda's point in calling a meeting of the GAFCON leaders was, do we now need to act and reorder the communion in line with our theological principles? Because theological principles have been set down, but the structure and order hasn't followed. So a meeting was held this week in Sydney, Australia, and present were some of the original 2008 GAFCON primates, Peter Akinola of Nigeria, Peter Jensen of Sydney, Australia, as well as Glenn Davies, the former Archbishop of Sydney, Steve Wood, the Archbishop of the ACNA was there, Miguel Ochoa, the Vice Chairman of GAFCON from Brazil, Henry Ndikuba, the current Archbishop of Nigeria, two prominent businessmen who've been involved in the leadership of GAFCON, and the General Secretary, Paul Donison, met, and they put together this statement. Then once the statement was written, there was a Zoom meeting of the GAFCON primates. And I'm told that all of those who attended this meeting endorsed the statement, a majority of primates. I do not know who was not present, but those who were there all endorsed it. So this is, some have said, oh, this is just done under the signature of Laurent Mabanda. No, it's done under the GAFCON Primates Council. They've all endorsed it, and nobody has disavowed it so far. So what have they said? They've now created the global Anglican Communion. And they have declared that the traditional instruments of communion, the Archbishop of Canterbury's office, the Lambeth Conference, the Anglican Consultative Council, and the Primates meeting, they've found them to be spiritually and doctrinally bankrupt, and they do not recognize their authority anymore. A little pause there. The Anglican Consultative Council was a creature of the late 60s, early 70s, and the Primates meeting a creature of the late 1970s. So those are modern innovations. The Archbishop of Canterbury has, of course, been around since St. Augustine of Canterbury, but he only held the position of first among equals really since the 1860s, when the first Lambeth Conference was held in London. So these are not biblical, essentials. Mm-hmm. These are things that have arisen over the course of history to help order and structure the Anglican Communion as it grew from the Ecclesia Anglicana, the church in England, to a worldwide organization where the vast majority of people are not English or of English ancestry, but worship God in ways set out by the Book of Common Prayer, the articles, the homilies, and so on. So they're saying that Canterbury no longer is the identifying principle of Anglicanism. In other words, in relationship with the Archbishop of Canterbury is no longer how you define yourself as an Anglican. What will define us is Scripture. And I see Peter Jensen of Sydney's hand behind this.
Yeah, this hermeneutics.
Sola Scriptura. Yes. There's only one foundation of fellowship. And I'll quote, the Holy Bible, translated, read, preached, taught, and obeyed in its plain and canonical sense. So, we've got a new name, Global Anglican Communion. We reject the former instruments of communion. We will be led by a primates council, which will be drawn from primates affirming the Jerusalem Declaration signed in 2008, and will each be accountable to Scripture and to each other rather than to the Archbishop of Canterbury. And they're saying this is a restoration, not a revolution. This is not a breakaway church, but a restoration of historic Anglican fellowship grounded in the Articles of Religion and the Reformation formularies. So this is a major, major, major step of reordering reordering the relationship of the Anglican churches in line with theological realities on the ground that have been present since at least 2008, if not longer. Now, there have been some responses.
Yeah, I bet there have. Well, we're going to talk about ceremonials, but there's one response we've not heard yet, and that would be the Global South. Leadership from the Global South has been mute. We have heard that they were not informed about this coming statement, that this is kind of shocking to them.
The Global South office was not involved in the creation of this document. Mm-hmm. Many of the Global South leaders are on the GAFCON Primates Council. Mm-hmm. So you could say, yes, the Global South, some of their people were involved. But the Global South is not a primatial organization. It's an organization of provinces. And the way the Global South works is that for the Global South to adopt a policy or to do something, the constituent provinces have to endorse it. So it's not just the Archbishop of Nigeria signing off, it's the Nigerian Synod signs off. So the Global South is not going to make any comments in the short term. Well, frankly, because I think some noses are out of joint that they were not consulted. And on the second level, outside of the primates, unfortunately, GAFCON and the Global South don't play together nicely.
I think that's true. I think at least as far as their staffs don't play nicely together. I think at the primate level they're very cordial, but you get to the point where there's just human resource issues, George.
Well, at the Kigali conference, which was 2023, basically we were told that from this point forward, the Global South would be the political arm, and GAFCON would be the practical
minister,
arm.
Yeah, mission
Minister.
Yeah.
And this statement appears to reverse that, if you will.
It does. It reverses that to the fact that the Global South never became the political arm. They never stepped into that role. We've been reporting since Kigali. Well, anytime now, Global South's going to step up and take on Justin Welby, and they never did. Now GAFCON's in that absence saying, now may be the chance to do it, and GAFCON's ready, prepped, and financed, and willing to take that forefront.
We also have cultural differences here, in that the Global South is more Asian oriented, than the GAFCON, which is more African/Australian focused. I don't think you would see the Sola Scriptura statement from the Global South. It would commend it, but some of the Anglo-Catholic provinces of the Anglican Communion, Tanzania, West Africa.
That statement alone about the scripture is almost Calvinistic.
Central Africa, Tanzania, West Africa, some of these provinces do not share the evangelical heritage that, say, Nigeria does. So there's some internal Anglican politics to be overcome. And also there are different timelines and different worldviews, and that I know these speak to prejudices, but, the leadership of, the ethnic Chinese leadership of Singapore has a different timeline and worldview than, say, the Church of Nigeria or the Sydney Australians.
Absolutely. The Asian culture is long term. They're in it not for tomorrow. They're in it for the long haul. They have a much different time frame than we do here in the West. In the West, we want results yesterday. And
so is this a major problem? No, I don't think so, because I think the Global South primates will try to find their own level in this. They may not. I don't know how it's going to play out, but I don't see this being open war.
No, I think
so. It's not like the Anglican Church of Canada's archbishops are, put out a categorical rejection of this. I mean, nothing like that's going to appear.
Well, I think they have the same interest at heart. What we have in the Anglican Communion is not working. The instruments of unity are chaos and disorder. And they've only existed since 1867 was the first primates meeting or Lambeth Conference. So there's a relatively short history of these instruments of unity, and they just don't work. And
we also need to keep in mind what Laurent Mabanda told to Dominic Steele in an interview with the Pastor's Heart out of Sydney, video service, that this was a collaborative, collective decision. In other words, and that really is the African way of management. We seldom get somebody running out ahead of the crowd and saying, "Here up, catch up with me." It's pretty much a common mind approach is how the Africans. It's again, we're dealing in cultural stereotypes,
Yes,
but more of a common mind approach. So that to say that this is one group or one person running ahead of the rest, trying to pull them along, is not correct. Now, will everybody be at the same spot? No. I will say that GAFCON has been blessed by Sarah Mullally's response, which is weak. In this same letter where she talks about, well, first off, remember this meeting was called before she was even appointed Archbishop of Canterbury. So this is coming. And maybe some in the GAFCON camp thought we could sort of ride the Mullally, anti-Mullally wave, or maybe just this thought, well, you know, this has been coming, we might as well do it and do it now and not go forward. But Mullally writes that she's now studying the Nairobi Cairo proposals of the Inter-Anglican Standing Commission on Unity, Faith, and Order. And they present a vision of Anglican life together that, rather than expecting a structural theological uniformity, envisions space for confessional and geographical groupings set within the shared life of the instruments of communion, as well as restructuring the instruments of authority. And this is going to be talked about at the next ACC meeting in Belfast. So Mullally basically is saying, trust the system, let's play according to the rules, let's follow all this and that, and let's not be hasty. Well, the major players have already said, well, we're not playing that game anymore. Mm-hmm. So Mullally is, this letter will be seen as a sign of weakness and lack of political strength. She's just been handed her head by the House of Bishops, killing LLF, and she had been one of the floor managers to get LLF through the House, through General Synod. She's just been handed her head on that. Even though no one will say that out loud, she suffered a political defeat, her team. Now she's responding not as Catherine Jefferts Schori would have, you know, with fire and brimstone and strength, saying, okay, fine, you won't get a dime from us. You won't, you know, your students will be sent home from seminary. In other words,
we're taking names. You're being deposed. Yes.
She's not the cutthroat leader, and Catherine Jefferts Schori was a successful cutthroat leader that the Episcopal Church's first woman archbishop was, primate.
Yeah. Well, Catherine Jefferts Schori listened to her lawyers as well. She got a lot of advice from it was David Booth Beers and others who helped her fight the war. And Sarah Mullally doesn't have, from what I can tell, those type of advisors. I don't know if Welby took the advisor with him, but that this is not the letter the communion was expecting. They were, yeah.
But it's too long. And she also talks about the safeguarding fiascos, that they're going to be a listening church and this and that. Mm-hmm. The safeguarding failures have left a legacy of deep harm and mistrust. As Archbishop, I'll remain committed to listening to survivors, caring for the vulnerable, and fostering a culture of safety. Well, that's a joke. Why do I say that a joke? I'm not being mean or harsh. Mm-hmm. Kathy Newman of Channel 4 News is basically brought down Justin Welby, revealed the Smythe failings, John Smythe, Welby's connection with cover-up of the abuse committed by John Smythe. After her announcement of her installation, of her appointment, press questions are taken. They don't take any questions from Kathy Newman. They don't give her 10 minutes of time. They give everybody else but Kathy Newman time to interview Sarah Mullally. Instead, Kathy Newman is given the Bishop of Winchester, Philip Mount Stephen, who was asked by Kathy Newman, is Mullally going to be a good safeguarding? And the bishop's advisor says, well, we're not going to answer those questions.
Ouch.
So, and then we have public statements by Rose Hudson Wilkin, basically saying, well, the war with the press will continue. We don't trust you. You don't trust us. So there's skeletons in Sarah Mullally's closet. We've seen a copy of the CDM filed against her in the Alan Griffin affair. There are other stories that are going to be coming out of failed oversight in safeguarding. And Kathy Newman's not going to be put off by pencil pushers at the bishop's offices. So I have to say the World Global Communion is probably 3 or 4 on Sarah Mullally list of headaches.
Well, I
Not
mean,
number 1.
if Church House and Lambeth and Canterbury were not able to stop the underfunded Anglican TV, Anglican Inc., and Anglican Unscripted, they're never going to stand a chance against Channel 4. So, yeah.
So now, is this a schism? No, because the Anglican, the Archbishop of Canterbury never was a pope.
Right.
Never was what shorthand TV or newspaper headlines assume that she was. So it's not a schism. It's not a rupture. It's not a break from the past. This global Anglican Communion is basically a restatement of the reality on the ground.
It's a reset.
And this global Anglican Communion could constitute up to 80% of the active membership of the communion.
I just looked it up. It's 86.7% of the Anglican Communion is under a GAFCON flag. That's not bad.
Now, this will be difficult for people, say, like me. I'm in the Episcopal Church, the Diocese of Central Florida. I agree with everything in the Jerusalem Declaration, but my province will never sign on to that.
Well, did you sign? You were at 2008. Didn't you sign it?
No, I don't think I was, because I was press.
Oh, you're press.
And I don't like to cross that line. But my point is, there'll be plenty of people in the Church of England who will be in my situation.
Yeah.
That their sympathies and loyalties will be to an outside organization, but because of the structures and hierarchy, they're, I don't want to say trapped, but they're not going anywhere. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not leaving the Episcopal Church, the Diocese of Central Florida, but my sympathies and my loyalties and my theologies are with a different team, so to speak.
Now, we'll
see that in Canada.
Sure.
We'll see that in Canada, New Zealand, Wales, England, Scotland, all the places where the conservatives are in the minority.
I wonder what would happen if your bishop decided to sign it, the Jerusalem Declaration, and endorse it, and become can your diocese become a GAFCON member? That would be interesting to see.
I don't think that he would do that, not because of lack of conviction, but because we don't have the money to fight lawsuits.
Yeah.
So in other words, he would immediately have to go through what Bill Love went through. This would be, or somebody might say he's abandoning the communion of the Episcopal Church, or whatever.
Sure.
Central Florida doesn't have free cash to throw around. And if what money we do have, we want to invest in proclaiming the gospel rather than reordering the deck chairs on the Titanic, which at the end of the day is what we're really talking about here. I mean, proclamation of the gospel is the imperative, not who recognizes who and who recognizes what.
No, I mean, the reality is the Church of England and the leadership of the Anglican Communion has spent 20 years redefining what an Anglican is, to the point where it's now undefinable and unrecognizable. GAFCON wants to step into the role and say, no, we will help reset the definition of what an Anglican is and how it's missional to the gospel of Jesus Christ. And let's watch that happen and watch it play out. I congratulate them for the statement. And we will be reporting on this, except for next Tuesday. You're going somewhere. What another week off? You're going to take another week off, aren't you?
Yes. Doing a parish cruise.
A cruise? My parish never took a cruise. You're going to get on a boat on the ocean. Is it a Disney cruise, or what type of cruise are you doing?
Celebrity cruises out of Miami. Mm-hmm. Going to the Western Caribbean. I don't know. You'll have to ask my wife.
Yeah, you're not in charge. I get it. But I'm not in charge.
We've done a fundraiser, and I think we've got like 40 cabins booked. So I have to bring my vestments, though, because we're doing services.
That's cool. You're not the only person taking the week off. King Charles is going to take a week off and go and visit Pope Leo. That's going to be interesting. Is this because is this the result of canceling LLF?
I doubt that.
Okay.
But it is, somebody's had a success somewhere. The king will visit Rome's Basilica of St. Paul outside the walls, which is one of the four most venerated churches in Rome. And Leo has granted the King of England the title Royal Confrater, or brother. And in this basilica, a special chair will be set aside in the apse with the arms of the King of England, reserved for the King of England's use. This is an ecumenical gesture, a recognition of the common Christian roots of the Church of England and the Roman Catholic Church. And it's a big deal, but doesn't really change much of anything.
What do you mean? Hold on. Let's back up here. If you're an American, you know today is no King's Day, and you know Pope Leo is American. What is he saying to the liberals in this country on No King's Day?
Oh, my goodness. I don't know. I mean, this may be like the blessing the ice cube, something Leo finds out about when he shows up for it. But this is a big deal. But here's the funny thing: I don't even know if King Charles is an Anglican, let alone is a Christian, let alone an Anglican. That's unkind of me. That's cruel. But it is a significant outreach by the Catholic Church. It'll be the first time in 500 years that the King of England has prayed with the Pope.
Wow.
So that, good pictures, pretty pictures. Sure. But it'll be just like my church. I have chairs in the front row of my church that I think people are waiting for the King of England to sit in because nobody ever sits in them. So,
yeah. We always had the bishop's chair off to the right in the altar of most of the churches I've been to. So one of those things. George, I think we've come to the end of the episode. I'm Kevin Kallsen.
And I'm George Conger. And you've been watching what episode is
938.
938 of Anglican Unscripted.